Alderperson Robinson.
Present.
Hertz.
Here.
Gilbert. Present. Swanson. Here. Parker.
Here.
Pulis.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Mayor Tomes.
All right, we will start with the fire and police pension actuarial presentation. Linda.
Okay, and I'm just giving a brief introduction because I know we have a lot on the agenda. So today, Lauterbach and Amon, Robert Ritz will be presenting the Rock Island Fire and Police Pension Actuarial Valuation Report. We are still waiting for the final reports from the Firefighters Pension Investment Fund and the Illinois Police Officers Pension Investment Fund. And I was told that I should have those on or before September 6th. They do have a delay in those reports. So without any further delay, I'll present Lauterbach and Amon.
Thank you, Linda. Good evening, everybody. My name is Bob Reitz. I'm with Lauterbach and Amon, the actuary for the pension funds. We appreciate the opportunity to work for you this year. This is our first year performing these valuations, so and we're going to see some changes. I'll be happy to answer any questions or any comments you may have as we go through these numbers. So I'll go quick. So if I go too fast, I get talking fast sometimes, or if the numbers start to just spin around in your head, slow me down. We'll take care of it, all right? So moving forward, let's see, where do I have to point this to? There we go. The first page, we're just going to talk about the market value of assets, and the asset return for the year is really what's dictating a lot of the increases you're going to see in these numbers. So this is for the plan year ending 12/31/22. Looking at I'm going to look pretty much at the total columns unless I identify anything in particular we need to break apart between police and fire. Total, you had $74.3 million in the funds. Employer contributions or city contributions that came in during the year is $8.5 million. Another $1 million came in through the payroll deductions for the professional services employees. Your return on investments, negative $8.5 million. So on fire, that was a negative 12.9% return, and on police, that was a negative 11% return. Now, for both of these funds, we're expecting a 7% return. So when we do our actuarial numbers, we're talking really about almost a 20% loss on fire and a 18% loss on police. And that's dictating what a lot of these numbers that you're going to see are going to cause some increases for. You're looking at your benefits paid, just under $11 million a year, with expenses $131,000. Net for both funds, you're down $10 million from the prior year. Okay. Any questions on that? Going to the next page. There we go. This is breaking down the recommended contribution. So this is the amount to put into the fund each and every year. I'm going to look at these individually, both for police and fire. The top row here, fire, our current valuation, we're recommending $5.13 million. A year ago, the line below that was $4.5 million, and that was come from your prior actuary. And also there's a slight difference there between the funding policy that was in place. We're recommending 100% target funding. A year ago, you were targeting a 90% funding target. So there's a little bit difference in there. For police, this year we're looking at $5.9 million compared to $4.7 million from a prior year. So total in increase in contribution of approximately $1.82 million for both funds recommended for this upcoming year. Looking at your unfunded liability, so this is the portion of your total actuarial liability less your assets. Your unfunded liability for both funds combined is just under $125 million. And a year ago was $123 million, so about a $1.5 million increase in unfunded liability. A lot of it is due to that investment loss that we spoke of a little bit earlier, that negative approximately 15 to 20% return there. Looking at your funded percentages, fire funded percentages up approximately 32 basis points. Police is down approximately 125 basis points, so net you're kind of sitting relatively flat from a year ago. Again, investment returns holding you down, and a lot of expenditures and benefit payments withdrawing from the asset base that you have as well. Any questions on that? Okay. Going forward to the next page, see if I can get this right the first time. There we go. The next page really breaks down why the contribution increased so much, what were the driving factors of all that. The first line item being expected changes. So each and every year we would expect your liability to increase through what's called the normal cost. That's your accrual of benefits for all your actives. Also increase due to the interest being earned on the existing liability. And then we take out the benefits that are paid each and every year. Also, the way that we're amortizing your unfunded liability is called a level percent of pay basis, which means we're expecting that amortization payment to increase each and every year approximately 3.25%. So if we're looking at the expected changes, fire, we would have expected your contribution to go up about $337,000. Police expected it to go up about $235,000, combined about $572,000. From that point below is all actual demographic experience or financial experience that goes into change the contribution, again, in line with what we recommend. Salary increases for both funds, slight decrease for fire to your contribution. Police, slight increase of $11,000. Actuarial experience, this would be all your demographic information. So fire, you didn't have very much. You had 3 new hires. You had 2 retirees pass away. Both were surviving spouses. That's why you're seeing a decrease. Whenever a member passes away, your liability of the fund typically goes down. Although they do still have a surviving spouse, you're only paying that benefit for 1 lifetime instead of 2 at this point. Police, there was a lot more demographic activity. You had 9 new hires, retirement, a disability, 6 vested terminations, and you also had a couple deaths as well that balance it out. But as a whole, with that, disability is really a big driver of increases in liability, and also retirements are a big increase in liability, in addition to the 6 new hires with regards to how they're accruing additional benefits. New normal costs are being applied. We're seeing a $66,000 increase to that contribution for that demographic experience. Assumption changes line item, there's a lot of them, mainly because we're your new actuary. So your prior actuary had a certain set of demographic assumptions in place. We have a different set of assumptions, mostly the same, a lot of small differences here and there. The big assumptions to keep in mind is your expected rate of return. That's one of probably the biggest driving factor of cost would be your expected rate of return. Other being mortality rates. We use probably the most conservative mortality rates, doing full generational projection of mortality, those sorts of things. Retirement rates, everything else. We do our own experience study to come up with the rates we establish, and we use for all approximately 500 of our police and fire pension funds. Plan changes were pretty minimal. There's a couple legislative acts that went into place this past year, primarily affecting police more so than fire, with regards to there's a new benefit that's payable to surviving spouses of retired, to the surviving spouse of a retired police officer who gets married after they retired. There's now a benefit that's payable that was not previously available. So that's a new benefit that came out this past year that is causing a little bit of an increase into some funds contributions should they have a member qualify for that benefit or their spouse to qualify for that benefit. Funding policy changes, increase of about $650,000 for fire, approximately $870,000 for police. This is primarily going from that 90% funding target to 100% funding target. You see what that impact does to the funds. Asset returns less than expected. We already spoke a little bit about the asset returns not being so good for calendar 22, increasing your contribution by about $263,000 combined, and also contributions less than expected, approximately a $40,000 increase combined for both funds. Any questions on that?
Could you go over that spouse thing again, the being married after?
Sure. So there was a new public act that was introduced in early 2023 that now allows for, if you were a retired police officer and you got married after you retired, so typically when you retire, you have the ability to say, I want to have my benefit payable for my lifetime or for my lifetime, including my spouse. So if someone retires when they didn't have a spouse, now they get married after that retirement age, as long as they've been married for 5 years and the spouse has attained the age 62, should the retiree pass away, that surviving spouse would now receive a benefit for up to 15 years, which was not currently available prior to this act coming in.
So would the benefit be equal to what the retiree's benefit is?
It would be the same benefit. The surviving spouse just is not entitled to future COLA increases.
Okay.
The 3% cost of living they would not be entitled to, but they would get the same exact benefit that the member was in receipt at the time that they pass. There's that benefit's already been in place on the fire side, and it's actually a better benefit on fire. You only have to be remarried for 1 year, and also there's no 15-year cap. It's payable for the lifetime of the spouse. But police did not have a synonymous benefit, so now they introduced one this past year.
Okay.
So the largest driver behind the contribution increase is the change to 100% funding over 18 years. What was it before, 90% over how many
90% over 19. So really, when you were talking about the amortization base, the Illinois statute, as we're talking about the statutory minimum, is trying to get your funds 90% funded by 2040. So that's really the 19 years or 18 years a year ago is starting to target that 2040 date. So now we're just continuing that same amortization period from a year ago, but just 1 year closer to that 2040 target. So the metric of 18 years versus 19 years was always going to happen whether you had your prior actuary stuck with your prior funding policy or not. It's really that 100% versus 90% target.
And why did you choose to change it? Was it?
One is just a more prudent funding policy to the fund to ensure all firefighters and officers are going to have benefits, money available to pay the retirement benefits in the future. When you look at some of these other numbers here, I could jump back a couple pages and to the one more. Oop, we're going the other way. One more. There we go. If we look at the employer contributions plus the employee contributions, so look, for example, on fire, about $4.5 million coming in, your benefit payments are $4.9 million, okay? So you're paying out more that's coming in, so your fund is really reliant upon investment returns. You have to hit that 7% number, right, to be able to have a positive investment return to keep your funding percentage going up. When in the case you have a bad investment year like this, that funding percentage is going to stay down, and your asset value is going to keep diminishing. So really getting that more contributions into the fund at a higher target kind of protects you against some of those, some of that cash flow activity you might see, and you're less reliant upon investment returns alone.
How many cities do you represent?
Cities or plans, so
Plans,
we
yeah.
probably almost 500.
How many of them are 100 versus 90, do you have a feel for that?
By natural attrition, not many. So a lot have done such things as bond issuances and stuff like that to get there. You might have some of your smaller funds that just have a handful of people get there, but I would say definitely less than 10% of the funds are 100% funded. The median for our plans are right around 58 to 60% funded.
How many have the 100% funding?
Oh,
as their
we
target?
recommend 100% to the 99% of our clients.
But how many of them actually do it?
How many are actually doing that?
Yeah.
A large percentage of that, yeah.
But we're only required to do 90 per state.
You're only required to do 90, that's correct. The statutory minimum, so Linda spoke earlier, you're still waiting from your reports from IPOPIF and IFPIF, the consolidated funds producing their reports. Their number is your required minimum amount. We recommend doing more than that, just it's a healthier advantage to the funds. But again, you're under no obligation to do so.
It was just a big shock to get a $1.8 million.
Understand, yeah, it's,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then on top of losing 20%.
correct, and that's a big bogey to hit out there, and that's why we have amortizations over a period of time. We take into account that fluctuation, so for example, that investment return you had this year, we have what's called the actuarial value of assets, which is different than your market value of assets that we use. So if you valued your fund on market value, we have that whole 20% loss you saw, we would have to take that and reflect that today. Under this actuarial value of assets concept, we defer 80% of that, we smooth it over a 5-year period. That limits that volatility that you might see even having back-to-back or multiple investment, either good or bad years. It kind of brings that more of a narrow corridor, so you're not going to have that true dramatic impact that you would see.
Do you have, what would our contributions look like if we only did 90% funding?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back. There's a page in the back here. I'm going to jump. It's called Alternative Contribution. It is on page 16 of your packet, so if you have a hard copy in front of you. right there. So this alternative contribution, we also include these on our reports. This would be a 90% target, mimicking the numbers you would receive from one of the consolidated boards, with the exception that we use our assumptions versus their assumptions. So for example, fire uses a 7.125% assumption. For IFPIF, we're still using 7%. Police is using 6.8, we're still using 7%. So there are some differences in there, but the metric 90% under the projected unit credit cost method are the two drivers of what that difference is between our recommended and then also the statutory minimum.
Can you tell the council what happens if we don't make that 6.8 or 7.1%? What happens with us with regard to proper funding or proper budgeting to meet that actuarial assumption?
So right now, your minimum requirement would be what you're going to receive, either these numbers you're going to see here, 4.5 million for fire, 5 million for police. That's at 90% target, or whatever you get from IFPIF or IPOPIF. They're going to be relatively close to these, probably within, I'm just going to say a couple $100,000 either way, just based on the different assumptions and so forth. What happens if you don't hit that? Really nothing.
If we don't meet our actuarial assumption, like we assume that we're going to be able to get, for police side, 6.875 for return net of all fees.
Right.
So if they do not meet that goal, what are the ramifications that the city can expect?
I'm going to answer it opposite first. If you do meet that goal, so say you hit exactly those expected returns, we would expect your contribution to go up approximately 3.25% a year, okay? Because that's the way you're amortizing that unfunded liability on an increasing payment. You've met your assumption, excuse me. That's the biggest driving factor, would be that expected rate of return. So as long as you're hitting that, we would expect your contribution to go up about 3.25%. Now it just gets to the how much, if you don't hit it, it depends how far you're getting it from. That creates additional actuarial, presumably, losses if you have not hitting that goal. Again, those losses will increase your contributions. If you recall, for a pension fund, there's only 3 ways to put money into it. There's employee contributions, which is their percent of pay dictated by statute. There's investment returns, and then there's city contributions. So if you're not getting your investment returns as you should, the only thing that can go up would be your city contribution. So it is a balancing act between there. It's not necessarily dollar for dollar per se over time. Like I said, with the smoothing and all those sorts of things, kind of weans some of that out. But that's really what the impact would be. So if you're not hitting that expected rate of return, you can expect your contributions to increase.
So, and for the city to be able to budget properly to meet our obligation, this is very similar to what IMRF is, their policy currently, is that correct?
IMRF is a little different in a couple different categories. One, they target 100%. And 2, they require you to pay that bill before pretty much any other city expenses. You're paying your IMRF contribution. So all that money is coming in. That's why IMRF is at 100% funded today. Even with some of this volatility we had in the market recently, they're still holding steady at 190+%. The other differences, consolidation just took over a year ago. You had local investments, local pension boards managing the funds, but ultimately the contributions still come back to the city's discretion how much to put in. They just make recommendations for how much to do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
So, well, the last time I remember having this pension actuarial discussion, whatever, I remember the conversation was, because Mark serves on the Consolidated Police Pension Plan Board, and he was trying to tell us that we were required by state statute to adopt their assumptions for what, especially for the investment return. And we did not. We just went ahead and went back to the way we did, I think, what did we do, 7%? So are we required or are we not by state statute to follow the assumptions set out by the consolidated boards? Or do we have the discretion to adopt our own assumptions?
You do have some discretion. So, for example, the expected rate of return is the biggest assumption out there. Foster & Foster, the actuary for both police and fire pension funds, did an experience study. They produced a recommended amount, but within that of approximately 6.75%. Within that recommended amount, they also did have, some percentile categories. That'd be your 50th percentile, 6.75, that's the most likely to be achieved, but you can go to 60%, 40%, have a range, because things will differ, especially when you're looking at you have local assets held on hand to pay benefits through, that are not invested right now. So those are non-investable assets. If you're holding a couple $1 million not being invested, that would be reason to say our expected rate of return should be a little bit less than, the full consolidated recommended contribution. That's one reason why boards to do it. Another reason why pension boards would look at having a little bit more conservative assumption is to have better funding. If you're at 7% versus 7.25, as that expected rate goes down, as I mentioned before, you're relying less on investment returns to pay your benefits, which means your contributions has to go up. So it's a way to try to get additional funding into the fund faster than using just the straight assumption.
So what is the investment assumption that you're recommending, your firm is recommending? 7%?
We're comfortable with 7%. It's right in line with where both of the experience studies go, and in addition with, that's the majority of where your assets are being invested. So we don't think you're an outlier by any means, and it's up to the city to decide. You do have that flexibility to if you want to increase funding a little bit more, you might bring that expected rate down to target that number, to target a different number than what you're going to get from the state. Also, recommending 100% compared to the 90%.
But we don't control the investments that are being made.
Correct.
Consolidated board does.
Correct. And that's why you can just strictly say they're doing what they're doing, they're controlling the money. We're just going to use the rate that they do. But again, you also can take into consideration, like I said, some local cash you have sitting that's not being invested that might be reasonably, we'll receive a little bit less than that return.
The primary thing you're required to do is make the minimum statutory contribution.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, but so, like, with the losses last year of almost 13% for fire and 11% for police, and yet you're recommending 7%, I'm just like, in my mind, that doesn't compute.
So we don't get caught up in the short term. This
Right.
fund's going to be around for a long time, so we usually look at a 20 to 25-year horizon. And in addition, considering the consolidated funds just within the last year took all these assets in kind. They've just started to hire active management and those sorts of things to better be able to realize some of those greater returns. So they took a lot of assets. They've been sitting on it, there's still the lawsuit going on. Is it even constitutional? So some of the assets that have come in were just received and are sitting there. They haven't diversified, or they haven't reallocated a lot of their equity or allocations to different instruments or vehicles that they could invest in now that the prior pension boards were not able to do.
Have David,
Do you even consider, or take into account the devaluation of the dollar that's going on and that's projected to increase for?
So
For this-
inflation assumptions are included as well. That really comes into play more with regards to what COLA increases are going to be payable in the future, stuff like that. But all of that gets built into that experience study that Foster & Foster did, and then some separate metrics that we do on our own to also look at capital market projections. We're not an investment firm. I'm not going to tell you where to put your money, but we do rely on, not just the investment firm the experience study that Foster did, other capital market assumptions that might be put by Chase Morgan or BlackRock or any of these other big firms, the market expectations they have, we build that into what we think is, again, trying to figure out what's a reasonable rate. For example, if you look at the two police and fire, how they came up with their different assumptions, both of them came to the same point when it said 6.75 is your kind of 50th percentile. Well, the investment manager or advisor for fire is Marquette Associates. So Marquette, they say we can do better than that. They bump their rate up because we think we can do 40 basis points better than the Horizon study, which was the basis for the experience study that Foster and Foster did. On the flip side, police uses Veris, which is a little bit more conservative in what they expect their capital market projection to look like. They were looking probably 50 to 80 basis points lower than that 6.75% assumption. So both of those, even the investment advisors that both of those funds are using, have a little bit of difference in where they're expecting things to go. And again, keeping in mind this is a 20, 30-year horizon we're trying to picture, not caught up in the day-to-day asset losses that you might see in one year and the following.
So if you make the minimum, the statutory minimum contribution, say by 2040, what if you still don't hit that 90% target mark?
As long as you're making your contributions as expected, I don't think anything legally can happen. So if you're not making your contributions, the pension boards would have the ability to do it and try to revoke what they call intercept. So they would go to the state comptroller and intercept the transmission of property taxes that go to the city. They would be able to intercept their portion of that transmission to say, we want our pensions funded first, and then the rest would go. So that's about 5 years ago or so, that's when the state put a control into place to try to ensure that funds are properly funded. You know, you've probably heard the story of Harvey. You know, Harvey went 10 years without putting $1 into their fund.
Right.
There was no bells, whistles, alarms that were going off and say, you can't do that. There's no repercussions for doing so. Now they actually have that in place. The pension boards could go and implement this intercept concept where they could seize some of those assets. Harvey did that, for example, and then the flip side, the city went and fired 20 police officers, 20 firefighters, because now all of a sudden they couldn't make payroll. So that's a whole different situation, but that's some of the consequences that go on, and you don't want to have that bad will between a pension board and the city and trying to play, you know, games with people's lives and that sort of thing.
We kind of hijacked your presentation by asking questions.
No, that's fine. I'd much rather have this than me just reading numbers off a page. So we're hitting the highlights. We're hitting the important topics that I'm sure you want to hear about. So
Absolutely. Is there any more that you want to get to on this, or any
no,
more
I've
questions?
hit the main ones, the contribution, you know, the change in assumptions, what your statutory alternative would be. So you kind of have that range of what you're looking at. You know, even if you look at this number, it's still an increase from the prior year. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but actually I do. No, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't. But you know, you're still going to increase primarily because of that investment return. As Linda mentioned, the consolidated boards are a little behind right now gathering the data. You've submitted your Department of Insurance filing. There's just nobody left at the Department of Insurance to be able to pass that data on to Foster and Foster to do those valuations, or they just recently have been able to start sending that information along. So they usually take about a 30-day turnaround to get that data and produce your report. So if September 6th sounds about the right time, that you would start to see those numbers officially from the consolidated boards.
Thank you. I guess I would like to see from Linda, is there any way we could maybe get a comparison on 90-95%? We already have the 100 on what that would be, that contribution, the 1.8 million, but could,
90 is that?
9.2 million is the
9.2.
90.
okay.
What we'll
I mean,
do-
you could
Yeah.
straight line in between. It's going to be close.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how precise you want to be. Probably more intuitive is to look at a 10 or 15-year projection, running those numbers out year after year. Because when you just start looking at 3.25% increases, but compounding that for 10 or 15 years, the numbers get pretty big. You know, and the thought is what's going to happen to that 2040 year? You know, at some point in time. Someone might say we're going to extend that to 2050. There's already bills, legislation, talk about that happening. That's just kicking the can down the road, and that's happened enough in this space for long enough that people aren't identifying and taking control of this pension problem that exists. You know, yeah, it makes your budgets easier to control. You can make those contributions, but the amount of interest that's being accrued on it is ultimately detrimental to the fund and the taxpayers.
So the percent that were funded, I mean, I came to the city in 2016, and I don't recall fire ever getting even above 32%. We seem to hover around 32%. and now police is under 41%. I think at one point it was a little higher. We just, like, one step forward, two steps back.
Right, and I'm going to point you to one other piece of information. If you go back a page to page 15, it's titled Risk Management. The second bullet point there, the ratio of benefit payments to the fair value of assets, 19.93%. So that means you're paying out almost 20% of your money every year to pay benefits. So assuming zero contributions, zero investment returns, you'd run out of money in 5 years. That's a startling number, right? Same thing for police, 15%, a little bit longer, but 8 years, 7 years approximately is no contributions, no investment returns. So you're operating almost as a pay-as-you-go basis, but the money coming in is going right back out the door. You know, there's that need to get that kickstart. How do we get above that? As you indicated, we've always been hovering at 32%. We're putting all this money in, and we're not going anywhere. It's because of these benefit payments becoming due. It's still such a big drain, and your expenses are so large in comparison with the contributions coming in, and you know, kind of erratic investment activity over the last couple of years as well.
Part of the key to that is meeting your investment assumptions, right?
Pardon me?
Part of the key to making progress on your funded amount is meeting your investment assumptions,
Right.
which hasn't been done.
Yeah, and like I
in
said,
years.
that's been erratic for the last couple of years. I mean, with, you know, COVID ruined a lot of funds. You know, they had impact on many, many funds. You know, you look at your fund right now, you're at negative 15% example. Funds that are valued at April 30th are hitting right at zero. So that 3-month gap, both on the front end and the back end, is all balancing, right? So this is just a bad time to have a snapshot. Was at 12/31 because the prior year 12/31 was really, really down as well, or it was up. That was up. This was down. So you have two kind of extremes where you're measuring, because if you look at your 2020 run return, you're probably positive 18, 20, 25% or something like that. So they all, that's again why when we set that return, we kind of look at a longer expectation to like let that cycle ride a full course and not just be so caught up in the short 3-5 year term.
But in the consolidation of the funds, in the change in the way that they could invest their money.
Correct.
Was supposed to drive higher returns. We'll
Correct.
see it, we'll see what
They
happens.
have the ability. They haven't really done it yet. They're, like I said, they're just starting to hire some active managers and stuff like that on the fixed income side. They really haven't done much on the equity side yet, but they will have the ability to go above the 65% equity exposure. And then also a little bit more alternative investments that are available that might have a little bit more risk, but also have more reward.
Is there,
Well, that's changed. They can do
Yes.
more riskier.
Right. That's part of, so the whole theory around, of the consolidation was kind of built along the IMRF model, you know, to be able to invest the way IMRF can, so they can use alternative investments. They can go into some of these, you know, higher equity percentages and stuff like that. And that's what they wanted to build it around. But again, it takes time to get there, getting all the assets in, and then being able to have the structure, infrastructure in place to start to be able to do that the right way versus just running into it and, you know, making mistakes along the way, which I think they've done a pretty good job of controlling any mistakes and hiccups that they might have not foreseen.
is there gonna be a big spike in administrative fees then?
And
In administrative fees for, say, a BlackRock coming in and running all this, so is that something we need to budget for?
yeah, that's, so
Or is it minuscule?
it's probably relatively small, because that, all the administrative and all the stuff that's coming out is coming out of whatever percentage basis points that are agreed to with the funds. So when you consider both funds combined are approximately $15 billion, all those investment fees are getting paid, and your portion's less than 1% of all of that. So there's going to be a trickle down, I'm certain, but it's probably not going to be anything more substantive. And again, that's part of what the consolidation was based on, is we can invest your money, get better returns, and have less fees.
Okay.
So,
Anyone else got anything?
A question probably for Linda or Todd perhaps, but so walk me through, I've done this 6 times now, but walk me through again the timeline here. So we have to adopt the actuarial assumptions, and then that is what informs our budget for this winter, right?
Yeah.
When do these assumptions come before the council? Is that tonight or?
No, we'll come back during the budget process and we'll, part of the budget presentation will be an amount.
Right.
that we have to fund, we have to do the minimum, they've recommended a different number. So what we'll do, since it's such a big increase and that some of these things have
Right.
changed, during a work session in the future, we'll talk about different options.
And what we can also do is, since it is such a big increase, call what we call a transition plan, build that increase in over a number of years. So we want you to get on the right set of assumptions first and foremost, because that's what we're going to use for long-term funding. To get there sometimes is a challenge, as we understand. So we did a 5% or a 5-year transition plan. So for example, if it's a $1.5 million increase, we're going to increase it by $300,000 a year for 5 years until you get on that new level plane. So that's something you can implement as well if you have any interest in that, if that helps you achieve that goal. But again, we want to try to set the assumptions for the long term and then figure out a way how we're going to get there.
Yeah, good.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Heather?
Jack or Mike or Andrew? Mike. Like I saw 3.
Good evening, council. I'm just going to kick off the meeting. I'm not doing the presentation, but I do have some great news tonight that we reduced the number of our slides by 50%. Of excitement last time, and I think that's part of that is just because we've talked about this project for quite some time now, and it has been in front of you all for a few times. We've had public input. There's been a survey out there, so I think it has something to do with it. And it could have been the saxophone music that was going on during the live walkthrough of the presentation, and we've removed that as well. So, but again, on July 24th, we did present some downtown improvements to the council, and during that presentation, we received some feedback from you regarding some aspects of the project, including specifically the roundabout, the dog park, and both of those items really evolved around safety, liability, just the need for having a roundabout. What does that do for the project? Is it safer? Is it not? Alderman Robinson mentioned string lighting, maintenance, whether we're overusing that product in the project. Parklet structures were mentioned. The Rock Island logo, where you would stand in front of and take pictures regarding the labeling on the front of the letters, was not readable and looked kind of strange. And also just historical elements of the project were lacking. And so we hope to address some of those items tonight. I know that obviously the dog park and the roundabout are still in the project. Again, this project was created from local plans from 2015 and newer, and so that's kind of how we've evolved this project to get to this recommendation. Those items that some of you may or may not like can be removed or eliminated. We'd like to go out for bids with the project as proposed tonight, and then see where the project comes in. If the project comes in way over, we'd like to see that project reduced. As we mentioned before, we're looking at bidding this as alternates. So the area that we proposed for reconstruction on 3rd Avenue between 17th and 18th Street, that's originally not in the scope, that could be eliminated completely, and that would, by doing that, would put us very close to the project budget. So the dog park could also be eliminated. So there is options. What we do need to do is move forward with the project design sooner than later. And we really would need to know about the roundabout as soon as possible, hopefully even tonight. The reason for that is the roundabout, whether you're going to design it or not in the project, there's other elements of safety and engineering that need to go with that. And it's really not an option for an alternate. We do, again, believe that this is an exciting project and it'll recreate and energize the downtown, and that over the next few years it's going to be very exciting to see the project completion. So with that, I'll turn it over to the presenters, and again, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you and good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jason McKenzie, and I'm with Beanster and Kim, and here is Saloni South and Andrew Dasso, and they're going to present also tonight. I'm just going to kick it off, and then I'll turn it over to Saloni here. So Mike kind of got a little bit of my thunder, but I'm going to go through. So we're super excited to present these updated concepts of the rebuild Rock Island downtown. We're going to go over the project goals. We're going to go in a little more detail of the improvements, take our time, and go over them, and then how these improvements will accomplish these goals. And then we're going to do before and after side-by-side pictures and renderings of the improvements. I can't wait to show these to you. They look really great as far as when you guys take a look at them. And then last, we're going to do some question and answer. And if you could write down your questions and then wait till the end, and we'll be glad to answer any and all questions. So thank you for that.
Are you gonna stay into the meeting? Because we don't have a whole lot of time left for questions, it looks like. I mean,
Sounds good. We're gonna go through this fairly quick. So
okay.
we were, as Mike said, we reviewed all the council comments and feedback, and then business owner, public, project team feedback, and then we took this all into account when we were finalizing the concepts.
He's,
Yeah, it's turned off. Thank you.
we're back.
So as Mike said, this project was, kind of came from the 2015 Downtown Revitalization Plan. There's a lot in there that this project will accomplish these goals from previous economic plans and downtown groups. The goals of this project is enhance public spaces, encourage private investment, and then improve quality of life for downtown workers, business owners, residents, and visitors. The team feels collectively that this project will accomplish all these goals, bring back the downtown better than ever before, and while bringing more people downtown to play, in turn helping existing businesses grow and reinvest in the downtown and creating new businesses. We're just very excited about the possibilities. The city has learned lessons from the past, and the downtown will be designed and programmed for all age groups, reestablishing, strengthening the downtown for a very, very bright future. So now we're going to be playing a video of the entire improvements from start to finish here. And then I'll turn this over to Saloni, and she'll go in depth into the improvements and changes from the last meeting.
So throughout this design, we've made, I think, a really conscious decision to incorporate those three goals from the beginning that Jason had mentioned for investing or encouraging private investment, improving quality of life downtown, and enhancing public spaces. All of these really work toward that shared goal of just creating a cohesive collection of spaces downtown that people want to come visit, want to interact in, want to gather in, want to open up businesses in. I think we all have that shared goal for downtown. So with the Gateway Arch starting here, we're looking to reimagine that relationship here with Schwiebert Park on the other side of the street, and really strengthen that connection between commercial spaces and recreational space. With the discussions from last time with a little bit more of the emphasis on historical elements, We did want to point out that in the existing downtown, there's a lot of those bollards and entrances at the intersections where those are concrete limestone right now, looking to tie in some of that material palette here, build on the foundation that we already have with the design elements, but then also take it a step further in the new design here. Looking at the pop-up stage on Second Avenue, so this is potential for pop-up stage here, but that building to the left side of the image here is Starcrest Building. We revisited some of the mural selections that we had and tried to tie in some more historic elements. This one's an image of Second Avenue, but just realizing that Quad City Arts would be incorporated in that, but we did want to make that connection a little bit stronger with what has been in this space before and what has the potential to be there in the future. The downtown aerial, so this one just shows the intersection of 2nd and 18th Street. I think this one really accomplishes the trifecta of all three of those goals, with looking at creating enhanced public spaces through the green space that's at that corner where that parking lot is right now, and then adding better lighting, more amenities throughout downtown. And then for the second goal of encouraging private investment, so new infrastructure development with the streetscaping, plantings, landscape, wider sidewalk amenities, and developing the streetscapes in front of local businesses so that it benefits the storefronts and their owners as well. And then lastly, improving the quality of life through pedestrian safety, and then creating a variety of just really exciting and impactful spaces that people can come and enjoy here. So the wider sidewalks that you're seeing on the right side here, those are like the 25, 30-foot wide sidewalks that we had talked about in previous presentations, bringing businesses some more visibility here through car traffic, as well as with pedestrian access as well, pedestrian being the primary since those sidewalks are so wide in this area. At the previous study session, there had been some questions about roundabouts versus the potential for a four-way intersection here. So we've done a considerable amount more research on this now. And with there's some references that we've included here. There's also some at the end of the presentation that we have provided in the slides, just for resources. But with looking at the roundabout, one of the main driving factors for it is, excuse the pun, is that sorry, that was not in my notes. For the locations for vehicle conflict, it's a little bit safer because there's fewer places for those four collisions to occur. There's no one in the center, there's no cars that would be in the center, there's no pedestrians that'll be in the center. So just creating less potential locations for that to happen. And then also with pedestrian conflicts, creating fewer spaces where they have to cross through multiple lanes of traffic at once. We also have the corners of this intersection that are bumped out further, so it's only creating one lane of traffic in each direction, so minimizing the amount of vehicular circulation in here as well. And then also just with that, looking at the speeds that people would be using this intersection by, obviously the slower the traffic in this area goes, the more safe it is for pedestrians, and around turns, we all know that it's natural to drive a little slower. So that is why we have kept the mini roundabout in the project at this point, but as Mike said, if we need to look at removing it, we also can. In addition to just looking at it from a safety perspective, we also had some discussions about whether aesthetically doing it as a roundabout versus a four-way stop at this intersection is more beneficial. And just we've shown for comparison here, on the left side you have the roundabout, and on the right side it's just a four-way stop. You have the stop signs in each corner. So from an aesthetic and placemaking standpoint, to have an intersection that is such a focal point in downtown and really wants to serve as the driver to kind of draw people into Second Avenue, draw people through downtown, and keep that that progression of and flow of people and businesses and activities throughout this space. The roundabout kind of serves as a focal point here. to do that. And it almost is a missed opportunity to not create something iconic in a spot like this. Adjacent to that, we have the green lawn. Some of the things that we had talked about last time with this were the potential for food trucks. We're showing a few on the parking, diagonal parking side here, so this would be the west side of the green lawn along 18th Street. So we thought this might be a good location for it, or potential for it, because there's not a whole ton of brick and mortar spaces here for dining in this particular area. So it would create something that's filling a need rather than creating competition here. At the front of this green space, we had last talked about providing a few different options for the block letter signage. There was a preference to see something other than the map of Rock Island on the letters. So we've done a few different options here where we're using logo colors, website colors, keeping the white and tying in the colors around the edges just to give a little bit of variety here. And then we had also discussed the potential for eliminating string lights in some locations. So here we looked at the potential for just doing the street lighting, like lampposts, in this park area versus doing colored lighting here as one of the other options that were explored. So we can definitely dig more into preferences here at the end of the presentation, but just wanted to kind of present all the options that we have here. For the outdoor dining, so moving along here, the slats, posts, and then the planters would be provided by the city in this proposal, but the actual furniture, the plantings themselves, that would all be up to individual business owners to decide what works best for your space, but the city would be able to provide that framework for that growth. In the top right image where you have just the one slatted piece wide section, that would be a potential for spaces like Huckleberry's Quad City Pancake House, where their sidewalks are 13 foot wide, we measured, outside, and that still provides space for a couple foot for a curb, 6 foot for one of these parklet structures, and then still have 5 foot left for just pedestrian traffic to go by. So even in the spaces where there are narrower sidewalks, the potential for this is still available. We did remove the ones that were shown in front of within parking stalls, considering pedestrian safety in those areas. So this would be an example of just one of those outdoor dining structures in front of local businesses. This is, of course, at the widened sidewalks on 2nd Avenue. But just want to show that as potential spaces here. So yeah, note here we have the dining structure removed outside Quad City Pancake in the parking area. There is still room to do it in the sidewalks on either end. So with the 3rd Avenue and 19th Street, this would be a typical street reconstruction with lighting, landscaping, the new street infrastructure, and streetscaping. And really by investing in developing all the infrastructure, our hope is that it'll create like a ripple effect that spreads to the businesses that are adjacent to it, the storefronts, and refreshes downtown as a whole. This is really, we see this as the beginning of the transformation of downtown. So for the different design elements, taking a deeper dive into individual streets, the lights we have shown as 50 foot apart on alternating sides. Right now they're around 60 foot, so we would be increasing that and being able to bring a little bit more brightness to downtown. The trees that we're showing in the landscaping also are at 60 feet. Currently there's really not a whole ton of consistency downtown. It's just kind of scattered. And then the picture frame concrete, we discussed that last time. And then for the waste and recycling cans on each block, we've increased the number of those as well. So now you can do one on either side of the intersection, and then also do one mid-block, just for a cleaner downtown. Moving on to the dog park. So currently this corner is kind of tired, underutilized, vacant space. So by redoing the sidewalks and redoing this space overall, we're really realizing the full potential of a property and of a space like this. Being able to bring people into the area, serve as a connection point for different corners of downtown. From revisions from the last meeting, a couple things to point out. The fencing was originally wrought iron. We changed it to chain link to make it a little bit more cost effective. And then perhaps one of the largest changes that we have done is to add in a separation here between small and large dogs in the dog park. We went and reviewed case studies, previous projects, a lot of research on this before making this revision, but we do have the square footage to do it. The smaller dogs park would be 4,000 square feet roughly. The larger one is around 12,000 square feet. And so with that, creating that separation between both of them will make it safer for dogs, dog owners as well, so. And then last but not least with Arts Alley. So the connection here is showing from 2nd Avenue to Arts Alley. This space really is a really dynamic placemaking opportunity to be able to create something iconic in this area, draw people in from 2nd Avenue. Here we're showing potential for winter markets, doing a Christmas tree outside Arts Alley, some of those different seasonal lighting pieces on the lampposts, things like that, just to tie together all of downtown. And then with the murals updated, this one is a painting by Irma Renee Cohen, who was the artist whose studio used to be in this alley before that building was demolished. So again, tying a little bit more to the history of this space and honoring her legacy in this area as well. And then another view of how the space can be activated year-round with these vendor stalls and the capacity for them to be used in winter. Really just creates a space that can have a variety of programming in it throughout the year, bringing in local businesses in these vendor stalls, encouraging that private investment that we've been talking about, generating excitement with just from business owners, their patrons, their downtown residents, and visitors to really make this a unique, one-of-a-kind, iconic destination. I'll pass it off to Drew.
All right, they left the fun stuff for me. So these are the before and afters. I'm gonna go quick here. WHPF Tower. This is interactive art through light and sound that can be displayed regularly throughout the seasons. Also, holiday events really become a regional destination for Rock Island and will attract people from all over the Midwest, as our opinion is. This identity is unique to Rock Island, that the Sky Bridge will be unique as compared to the Sky Bridge in Davenport, the 74 Bridge in Bettendorf and Moline. The gateway structure, it really celebrates the history of downtown. It greets the residents and visitors, identifies and really establishes downtown downtown Rock Island. I apologize. Creates a sense of place and enhances the public space. It really establishes the longevity of Rock Island. The dog park area provides community amenity for downtown residents that will bring the community downtown. Now, community is residents from all over Rock Island. I have a lot of friends, and I used to live in Rock Island, and we used to go out to Southwest Rock Island just to take our dogs. So the idea is that this is an amenity for in the entire city. Will serve as a programming tool for dog-friendly events throughout the year. Suds and duds and all kinds of different events with Roz Talks. And then the additional activity will encourage more family-focused environments and safety. Arts Alley is going to become a programming tool for arts and cultural services beyond what it is today. We'll have interactive art installations, movie screenings, and retail. The setting will provide a place to celebrate the history of downtown as well as the local artist. The lawn space that we're creating at the parking lot, we're using this to really encourage private investment. I can tell you any restaurant would benefit from having this next to them so that they can have a space that can host events and outdoor music and live shows. Even a place to have kids play while they're waiting for a table. The family-focused environment will kind of enhance and attract visitors during the day and at night, so. This alley is something, I probably know this alley too well, because when I was visiting the district, this is where I would park and walk down the alley, but I think it serves as a really vital connection between Circa, the Pancake House, the Center of Living Arts, Huckleberries, and then also anchors on the south side with the WHBF Tower. This will encourage the business owners to work together, work to provide better dumpster services and shared parking, and hopefully they can create a little bit of a neighborhood between programming events and the alleyway. And last, and probably most important, is the vibrancy of the district that we all know and loved. We're hoping that we can reestablish it with the Festival Street, and the vehicle traffic and circulation is going to provide for enhanced safety and visibility for retail and storefronts, restaurants on 2nd Avenue, and then we'll still have the ability to shut the street off and have markets and festivals and You Make My Weekend and all the good stuff. So this is a brief schedule. Wanted to make sure and reinforce our schedule. We're kind of on a tight timeline in order to get construction documents ready for spring bid. So today we're just requesting approval to move forward with construction documents out of conceptual design. Okay.
Thank you. Sure there's questions.
I only have a couple. I know there's a change in the fencing of the dog park. What kind of a cost savings were there associated with switching to a chain link fence?
Approximately 30,000, I believe. Yes. That's what I heard earlier.
I have one more question real quick. So we looked at the area outside the Pancake House, and there was mention that because we had some safety concerns and those were addressed, but then it was also mentioned that there was space for outdoor. Where would that, I guess I'm confused, where would that outdoor seating be at? Because it's a substantially smaller sidewalk along that way.
The thought process is we'll maintain a walkway along the building, and then it'll be, so you'll have a minimum of 5 feet, and then you'll have the parkland structure, and then you'll have 3 feet for the curb line for cars.
Okay.
So it'll be really kind of in line with the trees.
I have a couple. So in a lot of these pictures, I see, excellent murals. What is the timeline to actually get these murals on these buildings? Because I know that's going to be a huge project. Is that included in the timeline, or and if it is, what's going to be in place for them until they actually get put up? Because I'm not seeing that in any of the timelines as far as, or even in the budget for this to even be done.
It's in the budget. It's in the budget as far as for QC Arts to send it out for RFQ or for qualifications to artists, and then from there they will award, bring it back with when they have ideas, and bring it back for approval on the murals. But that'll be bid probably, or about the same time we go out to bid.
Okay.
back,
So we can plan.
so then they can plan for that. But as far as, when they put the murals up, it most likely will be probably after we're constructed in that area. So then, none of the murals get disturbed.
So like Arts Alley, you have them over in the green space. I mean, pretty much, they're accenting a lot of the buildings, which I love, but I know that's gonna take some time. That's a huge project, because those are not, little, small parts we're talking about. We're talking about complete buildingscapes.
Yeah, so,
You'd be surprised, actually, so
So-
just want to comment really quick on that piece.
sure.
Professional muralists, we're talking about large-scale walls like this, there are murals that can go up overnight. It's pretty amazing. Depends on the artist, the caliber of artist that's recruited here ends up after the RFQ process, but I just wanted to add that piece in.
As an example, Moses, they did the back of my building in 3 days, and that was one guy.
Sounds good.
We'd want to tie it into the construction seasons.
Right.
If work could be done on the murals, specifically in Arts Alley, prior to the total reconstruction, great. But I think we're still working through that process.
Just, go ahead.
On the murals, is there a ceiling that's done, and then how long do they last? Because I know we've got a lot of murals downtown that, now they're all flaking off, and we don't have any money to fix them or restore them.
Yeah, and one piece just to reiterate is that with regards to Arts Alley, the work of the murals are in tandem with the property owners, and so the building owners there will also have a sign-off on the final murals that are the concepts that are selected. But as far as the lifespan goes, the idea is that these are 10 to 15 year murals and beyond. There is a seal that can be placed on top of the artwork that would protect it from vandalism. So say we put these new murals up in Arts Alley, it gets tagged with graffiti. The idea is that included in the budget, there's this seal that would protect the original art from getting vandalized.
Okay, and I just have one last question. So the string lights, are we taking them off of Festival Street or east of Second Avenue and just having them on the green space in Arts Alley? Is that the plan? I'm not really seeing them depicted here on Second Avenue.
So we've provided few options, and we've actually reviewed other options of like Arts Alley, removing the string lighting and just providing uplighting.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, uplighting is difficult to really show a good rendering of how interactive it can be.
Right.
But we all know there are great buildings that have amazing uplighting. We're still exploring it. The lawn space, I don't know if you guys caught that,
Yeah, I've seen the options with the lawn space, and I mean,
with and
Yeah.
without the lighting. We're gonna have it as a line item in our alternates, so, what you're seeing today, I think, gonna get modified and altered.
To that, in Second Avenue, the portion over here that you're seeing does have the string lights still in it. It's just a
Okay.
daytime view, so it's a little harder to tell. The location here over the green space is where there's that
Option.
deliberation between whether we keep it or we just do streetlights instead.
okay. Thank you.
Personally, I'd rather see the stream lighting over where people are than dogs, because I don't think the dogs would really appreciate it as much as the people would. But you're gonna bid each of these will be bid out separate, because I'm not a fan of the dog park, but I know other people are, but is it gonna be like an à la carte kind of bid thing? Okay.
So, you guys did a great job taking into account our comments, so thank you for that. So I just have a question on the roundabout, like, if a pedestrian's crossing, so I get it if there's just like two-way traffic, but if someone is trying to cross the street, and how do the cars that are going back, I'm just confused, like, completely how it will work, rather than knowing, okay, I gotta stop here, and I gotta watch for pedestrians to cross or, you know, other cars turning. I just don't get it. And we're running out of time,
Yeah.
so I don't know if you can stay for a few minutes after or whatever. The other question I have about the lighting, the string lighting, so these are string lights of light bulbs, right?
Yeah.
So, like, are
They're,
they LED lights?
LED bulbs and they're
How long do they last?
on a cable. And then the lights are strung from the cable. They have lifespans of like 80 to 100,000 hours.
Which equals like what? Because I'm like, somebody's going to have to be responsible for changing those light bulbs. And I know when I used to work here at City Hall, it was our electrician, Tim, who was in charge of going around changing all the light bulbs, you know. That wouldn't change? Poor Tim's going to have to change all those bulbs?
Are you guys okay staying and answering a couple questions?
Yeah, we'd be
If
glad
we adjourn right now and then come back and ask some questions, are you guys all okay with that?
Yeah.
Because we got 4 minutes.
Yep.
So, okay, we are going to then move the RIFAC remodel presentation to 13A on our regular city council agenda, so just so everyone knows that. So with that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Alderperson Gilbert.
Aye? No?
Yes. Yes.
Swanson. Aye. Parker.
Aye.
Pulis.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Robinson. And Hertz. Meeting